All right, season's greetings, everyone. Good evening. I'm Gary Witherspoon, Deputy Project Director for Public Outreach for the Purple Line. On behalf of Governor Larry Hogan, Transportation Secretary Gregory Slater, and Maryland Transit Administration Administrator Kevin Quinn, welcome to the 7th Community Advisory Committee meeting for the University Boulevard area. Due to COVID restrictions, we are trying a new format this time out. Please bear with us as this is part of our first series of live public meetings. And please mute your mics and phones. Next slide, please. Tonight, we'll cover the segment of the Purple Line that includes the following stations: Tacoma Langley, Riggs Road, and Adelphi UMGC UMD. Next slide. You'll receive a project update from Matt Pollak and Vern Hartsock, the new leaders of the Office of Transit Development and Delivery, which oversees the project for the MTA. For those who didn't know, Matt and Vern replaced Chuck Latuka and Jeff Enzer, and I have been trying to fill the formidable shoes of Mike Madden. Mike refused to leave me any of his purple ties and shirts. Matt and Vern will introduce themselves and fill you in on what is happening with the project. After their introductions, we'll update you on construction and tell you how the MTA plans to manage that construction. We'll give you reminders about things to look out for during construction, and we'll provide an update on the art in transit component of the project. We'll also tell you where to submit questions beyond those that will be addressed tonight. This evening's presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to find it later on our website, purplelinemd.com. That's purplelinemd.com. You'll also find responses to questions we could either not answer or could not get to tonight. We ask that you hold your questions until after the presentation. Then we will open the meeting to questions, first from CAT members and elected officials. We'll invite you to raise your hand. This app does not have a wave your hand option, so you'll have to actually turn on your camera and physically wave so I can see you and acknowledge you. Then you should unmute yourself by clicking on the mic icon on your screen or by pressing Control-Shift-M. That's Control-Shift-M as in Mary. Non-CAT members who are viewing the meeting and have questions can ask them using the Q&A function on your screen. Just tap on the question mark icon. Type in your question and we will address your questions if we have time. If your question is not addressed tonight, don't worry. It will be addressed with other questions later in a question and response posting on the format. Similar questions will be combined, so you may not see your question posted verbatim. Thank you for joining us. Here's Matt Pollak.
Good evening. I'm Matt Pollak, Executive Director for Transit Development and Delivery for MTA, and I am responsible for the Purple Line project. My career has been dedicated to public transit. I've been involved on light rail projects since the early 1990s. My experience includes light rail startup and expansion projects in St. Louis, Pittsburgh, London, and Charlotte, to name a few. However, without a doubt, being able to join the Purple Line project here in my home state is a real source of pride. Going back a few years, I grew up in Montgomery County, and now I live in Prince George's County. I'm honored to be on the job, and I'm here to take the project to completion. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Vern Hartsock, our acting project director.
Thank you, Matt, and good evening, everyone. Again, I'm Vern Hartsock, acting project director. A little about me. I've served with the MTA for over 28 years. I've been working on the Purple Line for over 8 months. Prior to that, I was MTA's chief engineer. And prior to joining MTA, I worked in the private sector for 10 years in a variety of technical positions, including teaching college. I'm a software engineer by training, and I've successfully delivered a number of transit construction projects for light rail, metro subway, and bus. I'm a Baltimore native, and I'm extremely excited to be part of the team that's delivering the Purple Line project. I'll now pass back to Matt for a project update. Thank you.
Again, thanks, Vern, with the mute off this time. Well, a lot has been going on with the Purple Line project over the last couple of months. However, our biggest news happened last week, and that's what I'm going to cover now. A week ago today, the state of Maryland and our partners, Meridian, Star America, and Fluor, announced that we have reached a $250 million agreement that settles all outstanding financial claims and terminates the current litigation between parties regarding the Purple Line project. Next slide, please. Recognizing that the settlement agreement is being finalized and subject to approval of the Maryland Board of Public Works, the initial details are as follows. Purple Line Transit Partners, PLTP, will remain as the P3 concessionaire. PLTP will proceed with just Meridian and Star America as Fluor is leaving the project. PLTP's initial activities will concentrate on soliciting for a new design-build contractor. MDOT and MTA will continue to manage construction until a new design-build contractor is on board. Vern will give an update on the MTA management of construction shortly. After the new design-build contractor is on board, PLTP will be responsible for completion of the Purple Line construction and for the operation and maintenance of the new light rail line. And along the way, MDOT and MDOT MTA and PLTP will want to continue to facilitate success through ongoing dialogue with all of you, the community, the residents and businesses impacted by the Purple Line. We are trying very hard to minimize confusion, and we hope that you will continue to see this as a collaborative effort. Next slide, please. With that, I will pass to Vern to discuss MDOT MTA's management of construction.
Thank you, Matt. During October and November, MDOT MTA and the contractors that have been, and our contractors that we've taken assignment of, have been working to continue some very important aspects of the project. This includes the manufacturing of light rail vehicles, which is taking place in Elmira, New York, and in Spain, and other key project components such as the traction power substations and the railway signaling instrument houses, as well as electrical components and special track work. In addition, we've been working on completing the final construction designs for stormwater management and intelligent transportation systems across the alignment. Next slide, please. Starting with a few select locations, MDOT MTA is directing the resumption of on-site construction along the alignment. Now, as the contractors come online, the volume of this work will increase. And here is a list I'm going to name of a few of the contractors that are working in the area in question that we're speaking tonight, but we have well over a dozen contractors that have been remobilized and engaged in active work on the project. This includes Pessoa Construction Company, who's performing water and sewer utility relocations and concrete work, Henkels and McCoy, who are performing gas and overhead power relocations, MC Dean, performing systems and electrical work, Empire Landscaping, performing erosion and sediment control maintenance, and they're also responsible to maintain the grounds surrounding the new M at the University of Maryland, as well as Aves Construction, performing water main relocations, Interlock Steel Workers, performing steel installation for concrete support at the Northwest Branch Bridge, and JB Fay, who is doing the Northwest Branch Bridge deck work, and Priority Construction, who's performing wall construction. Next slide, please. Now, to speak about our near-term managed construction objectives, which are in the 3 to 6 month time frame from now, this includes the Northwest Branch Bridge, where we're completing the westbound bridge deck, retaining walls, and roadway paving, as well as water line relocations and overhead utility relocations. Next slide, please. Looking ahead to our longer-term managed construction objectives, which are in the 6 to 12 month time frame from today, we're going to continue work on the Northwest Branch Bridge. As we finish the one span, we're going to switch the traffic to the westbound bridge in order to complete the eastbound bridge deck, retaining walls, and roadway paving. Now, in its final configuration, the Northwest Branch Bridge will have 2 lanes eastbound, 2 lanes westbound, and a bike lane in both directions, and a sidewalk for pedestrians. We're also going to work on the continuation of sidewalks, gutters, storm drain installations, driveway connections, and roadway widening, as well as continuation of overhead and underground utility relay and traffic signal installations. There's 13 traffic signals that are to be installed in the quarter, and we'll construct as many as time allows us to, given our objectives. At this point, I'd like to pass to Gary Witherspoon for a list of construction reminders and an update on art and transit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vern. You should know that existing traffic patterns will change as work occurs as needed. Work may occur on both sides of the road and across roadways. When a lane closure is required, a notice will be distributed via text and email, but you have to sign up through purplelinemd.com. That's purplelinemd.com. Throughout our sites, you may see orange cones and barrels, which may serve as temporary barricades. You'll see flag persons when required directing traffic. We ask that you be especially careful around our construction sites. Pedestrian safety is paramount, as is the safety of our workers. We want everyone to make it home safely every day. Safety, after all, is our #1 priority. And finally, because underground utility work is ongoing, you may see temporary road plates. So please be careful. Next slide, please. And you can sign up for construction notices at purplelinemd.com. That's purplelinemd.com. For project questions, comments, and questions and comments, you can contact the M.MTA Public Outreach at outreach@purplelinemd.com. Again, that's outreach@purplelinemd.com, or you can call us at 443-451-3706. Again, that's 443-451-3706. Or for Spanish, you can call 443-451-3705. Again, that's 443-451-3705. We're working on manning both an English and Spanish hotline, so someone will be available to take your calls around the clock. Next slide, please. The Fabulous Art in Transit program. It is intact, you should know. We are meeting and talking to artists on a bi-weekly basis. They have been made fully aware of the project status. Almost all of their contracts have been completed, and they are now being fully managed by the M.MTA. Half of the 18 fully executed contracts are in your county. And you can see the artist's rendering on the project website, purplelinemd.com. We expect installations of the artwork to occur as designed in the latter stages of construction. Slide, please. Concludes the formal CAP presentation. Before we open the meeting to live questions, Matt will address those that came in before the meeting. Matt?
Thank you, Gary. We have 4 questions that we're going to respond to ahead of time. First question, do you expect any portions of the project design to change now under the settlement agreement? The Purple Line does not expect any designs to change. Next question, is it possible to accelerate completion of certain infrastructure in and around the project that is disruptive to the community? The state is evaluating construction across the alignment, including areas of local community priority. MTA is actively working with design, construction, and manufacturing contractors to keep the project moving forward. Our focus is on completing design, permitting, and any unfinished work. First with paving, stormwater, drainage, and other utility projects now underway along the Purple Line corridor. We remain committed to continue working with the community and local businesses to collaborate and find opportunities to minimize any impacts to the best of our ability. If the state is able to reasonably advance work beyond utilities using the available pool of contractors, the state will do so. Next slide, please. What is the prospect for seeking additional federal assistance with the upcoming change in executive leadership at the federal level? The federal participation in the Purple Line project includes $900 million in a full funding grant agreement and access to TIFIA loans. TIFIA is Transportation Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act. The state is not anticipating additional federal assistance for the Purple Line. And question number 4. What new general timelines can we expect for completion of various aspects of the project? The state will manage Purple Line construction until the new design build contractors on board. We do not have a new timeline at this moment. Next slide, please. What do you got, Gary? Oh, you're on mute.
We will now open the meeting to questions from CAP members and elected officials. We invite you to turn on your camera and raise your hand. After you're acknowledged, you should unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone near your picture or by pressing Control-Shift-M as in mute. Then you can ask your question. Non-CAP members who are viewing the meeting and have questions can ask them using the Q&A function on your screen. Just click on or tap the question mark icon and we will address your questions if we have time. Don't worry, if your questions are not addressed tonight, all questions will be addressed later in a question and response posting on the website. Similar questions will be combined, so you may not see your question posted verbatim. Additionally, we will accept questions for a week until December 8th at outreach@purplelinemd.com. That's outreach@purplelinemd.com. Now let's see if we have any hands raised. Turn on your camera if you'd like to ask a question. I do see some questions. Let me first share that we have Joe Mogs from SHA joining us tonight. We also have State Senator Malcolm Augustine, or a representative from his office. We have Jeff Cronin from Carroll Highlands, Kaylee Gunnard from the Tacoma Langley Crossroads Development Authority, and several others. Let's see if any questions have come in. Let's see. Hello, Joel.
Yeah.
Joel, do you have any questions?
but I don't think I have the recent presentation. I'm looking at my tablet, and I have it the University Boulevard on the 19th of May, 2020. So, I don't know if you can follow me along my question, but before you started, didn't at Tacoma Park, Tacoma Langley Transit Center, because at that time they did have 3 stations: Tacoma Langley Transit Center, Village Road, and Delphi Road, UMC station. Now, yes, this afternoon I was checking out those stations. And I did see some bus stops are still located there. And I want to know if they're going to have to relocate it, like down a little bit or up a little bit from the Purple Line station. And what's this? And that's the view on President Triumph on number 14. And I don't see the bus stop there on Presidential Drive and Thames Drive. I want to building lifted up. And the building is down in the corner, Presidential and Campus.
So you're asking where is the bus stop going to be on Presidential and University?
That's one of the questions. And it's a northwest bridge. I don't commit confrontation. I didn't see anything about the bus stop. The sidewalk, bicycle line, each down, traveling. The Purple Line itself in the middle, and the west side.
Okay.
I want to know if they're going to have that bus stop going to be affected, or they're going to have a problem with that bus stop right there. The picture doesn't tell me anything about the bus stop.
I think for the most part, Joel, and we'll have to check on this, but we'll double check, but for the most part, bus stops will be maintained in the area or in the vicinity where they have been. So there'll be as little disruption as possible. But we can further address your questions later on your bus stops. Please send me an email and I'll look into it further. We have another question from Amy Hart. She's asking about the art in transit at the UMUC station. She is concerned about it turning into flying objects, hazards in high wind storms, and thinks that it's not practical or attractive. Let me assure you that all of the art that we have selected will be safe in nature and will not be subject to damage by windstorms and other high weather hazards. Another question from Amy.
About the bus route itself. You know, some of the buses, like the bus,
Okay, hold on, Joel.
County.
Okay, hold on, Joel. We have another question from Amy. What work will exactly be accomplished by the state MTA in the interim until contractors are back on the job?
Okay, yeah, I can take that if you want. My computer's doing something. Hang on. I'm not printing. Oh well, I apologize if there's some background noise there. So basically, I'm going to pass it back to Vern in a second, but we plan to be doing construction under MTA management in the order of 6 to 12 months That's our conservative estimate of when we're going to be managing the project. Essentially, we're going to be doing as much of the utility work as we can do. I know that Vern, you want to go and give the actual details back on the university corridor for that?
Yes. Thank you, Matt. Absolutely. As Matt had mentioned, our prime objective in this time frame is to complete as many of the utility relocations as possible. Corridor, throughout the whole alignment, actually, because that makes the job of finishing the purple line far more easier for the next incoming design builder as they come in to complete the construction. Utilities are always an obstacle when building a light rail type system, because as you construct the rail system, you have to basically bury the cables and the infrastructure in the ground along the railway. And if there's pipes, gas, steam, electrical that is in your way, these have to be relocated. So that's a big part of our program right now. And in this specific area of the corridor, we've been working along the university campus to accomplish steam system relocations. There's hundreds of steam pipes along the campus that we're relocating. And as we do this, we build the new infrastructure to the latest standards. So it's actually kind of an improvement as we go through and complete this work. We're also relocating electrical underground lines, gas lines, water lines, and sewer lines. And in addition to all these utility relocations, to further respond to the question of what construction we're doing, there's a part of the project, there's hundreds of walls that are part of the project that we're at this time working to complete, walls that have started construction. In some cases, we'll begin and finish construction of walls that haven't been started yet. And there's also some other infrastructure that we're looking at, certain bridges and so forth, that if we're able to achieve work in those areas, we're going to tackle that as well. A great example is the Northwest Branch Bridge, where right now, as we speak, they're doing multiple pourings of concrete for the new decking, and we're going to be completing one whole section. The westbound section is going to be finished very soon. And again, as I mentioned in the final configuration, that bridge will be very nice and accommodate bike lanes, and will be very nice for the public's use. So these are among the construction elements that we're trying to achieve in the corridor, as well as working on some of our infrastructure that we're going to need to support the light rail vehicles as they're delivered to us from Elmira, New York, namely our railway yard and our operations and maintenance facility are among the items that we're working on to bring up to a level of completeness. So that's kind of a picture of what we're focusing on for construction. There's also in the corridor of this CAT group here, there's a pump station at the University of Maryland that we're completing so that we can properly dewater the area of the underpass in the campus area there. And so that's another priority item that we're focusing upon. So that's a very good question. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Vern. And actually, I did want to just sort of go on top of that as well. And certainly one of the reasons that we're having these outreach meetings is because it is the input of all of you, the residents and businesses in the area that can help shape how we proceed. So, for instance, we have taken numerous walks along the alignment with several elected officials and others, and the Prince George's County Department of Public Works and Transportation, with Vic Weisberg, who's on this call today, and actually with Mr. Martinez, who I understand is in the audience as well. So he's joined us on some walks as well. And so, part of the idea behind these walks is to see on the ground whether there are areas of work that was left incomplete when our contractor walked away, or possibly of disruption. And when we know of these areas, we look at and try and see whether it's something we can attend to in the near term. You know, I'm thinking about, I think it might have been at the Riggs Road intersection. It might have been the Carroll Avenue. I don't remember which now, but you know, the crosswalk area was left in a condition that was not really suitable for rolling carts or, you know, pulling carts or stuff like that. And so that's the type of thing that we want to be able to clean up. So in case that it does take us a while to get back and finish up the construction works, we want everything to be in a, you know, in a usable condition for everybody. So, you know, we do want to point that out. If, you know, I hate to use the word see something, say something, but, you know, along those lines, if there's something that is worthwhile bringing to our attention, and certainly if you can match it with a picture, that could be very helpful for us.
Okay, before I throw to Vic, there's a couple of questions from Talisha Searcy, City Council member from Tacoma Park. And she asks, what issues like broken sidewalks that were left by the prior contractor, will these issues be addressed in addition to the utility work?
Yeah, and that's a good question, and that really does feed off of what we were just talking about. The answer is yes. You know, if there's a sidewalk that is not in the condition that is usable for pedestrians, we want to know about that, and we want to fix it. You know, even if it's a matter of using asphalt instead of putting it into its final configuration, we want pedestrian access to continue during this period, this prolonged period of construction. So absolutely, we would definitely ask that if we haven't found it, that you bring it to our attention.
Okay, and Talisha also has a question for Joe. Joe, she says, given that SHA has a number of road works planned in that area, will the Purple Line delay create challenges for SHA completing their work on other roads?
I would ask for further details, but I can say no. If our LOD does not impact Purple Line's limit of disturbance, there is no reason for us to delay our plans. I do know of a few on New Hampshire regarding cycle tracks, and there are a few smaller projects on Carroll. I don't foresee any issues. And she can follow up with me with further details if she has specific examples.
Okay, before we continue with other questions, Vic, do you have anything to add or any questions to ask? You have to unmute, Vic.
Thank you, Gary. Vic Weisberg with Prince George's County DPW&T, and I've been the county's Purple Line liaison, but not officially a CAT member, so I brought my own CAT member. All right. Anyway,
switch control.
Moving right along. One of the advantages or challenges of the virtual environment. There he goes. He lasted until I was able to use him as a prop. Anyway, we really appreciate the effort on behalf of the state to come to terms and agreement with the concessionaire PLTP, and we know that, you know, now there, you know, still is the effort that is necessary to go through the get final approval from the Board of Public Works, which we fingers crossed don't anticipate being a problem. But I know that is a necessary part of the process. But more to the point, the process of getting a new design builder team on board. So there will be you know, some lag, and as you've very aptly articulated the process during that period, and sort of setting the table, if you will, I do appreciate, and the county appreciates, the several walks that the team has availed themselves to, both myself and our county staff, but also elected officials who who've been interested. And two, one of the questions that somebody raised about cracks in the sidewalk and things of that sort. The issues that we think are really paramount during this period is exactly what we're doing tonight: communications. And I think it's this sort of interim period, if you will, is even more critical to be in much closer contact with the community, and appreciate this effort and and additional efforts put forward by the team. And then if there is one single issue to impress, especially on this corridor, as I know the team has heard, is safety, safety, and safety. And the question about sidewalks is particularly appropriate. So if members of the community do see anything like sidewalk cracks, safety issues that they think can be addressed, please alert the team. And I can also avail my email, and if you want to CC me, but let the team know of any issues of that sort, because we really want to go the extra mile on make sure that the team is making every provision on safety, as unfortunately this corridor has the highest crash and fatality rate for pedestrians in the state. So it's really imperative. And sort of a segue to some projects that the county is working on that I wanted to note is both in concert with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission and Department of Public Works. There have been two projects that come through technical assistance from the Council of Governments through the Transportation Planning Board, and they are both related to pedestrian and bicycle safety and amenities in this corridor. One is being led by Park and Planning, that focuses on infrastructure in the neighborhood surrounding and connecting to the Riggs Road station. And then we are leading a project that is looking at, and these are both to bring up to 30% design plans to look at connectivity, both bicycle and pedestrian, in the Adelphi Road and Cool Spring Road community, connecting to provide a better and safer connection and connections from the community to the Adelphi Road station. We also, and this is just speaking for the DPW&T piece, plan on having a sort of a small sort of community focus group, if you will, in a week or two. And Gary, I'll probably reach out to you for some assistance on that. But individuals from the community who are on this call, I will leave my my email address in the chat box if you are interested in being notified of that community outreach on the 30% design for the Adelphi Road project. We would, please shoot me a line. And with that, I turn over. But thank you for making this this available this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Vic. A question from Jeff. He wants to know what is the best, in the best case scenario, how long should the selection process take place for finding a new design build vendor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And unfortunately, I don't have an official answer right now.
What's control?
Oh, Oh, you're just not seeing me. Basically, what's going on right now is the legal teams are working through the details that are going to go into the actual settlement agreement, and that settlement agreement is going before the Board of Public Works, and when it goes before the Board of Public Works, it becomes this public document, and we are hoping that included in those details will be a little bit more about some sort of a procurement timeline. I know that when the state was looking to do the procurement, we were in the 12 plus months of time frame that we thought it was going to take us to do a solicitation for a new design build contractor. So it's probably in that same general neighborhood.
Okay, a couple of questions about construction debris left along sidewalks. Is the MTA gonna police the debris that was left by the contractor?
The short answer is absolutely. If there has been debris left by Purple Line contractors, we want to know about it and we want to get it removed. And if it turns out it's associated with another type of contract, we'll work with the relative or the related agencies to make sure it gets the information gets to the right people.
Yes, so generally, if you can send us pictures and document where there's an issue, that'd be very helpful. Just send it to outreach@purplelinemd.com and we'll look into it further. Okay. All right. General question from Anonymous. What employment opportunities will be created?
That's a good question. I guess there's in the long term, the Purple Line will need to put together an operating and maintenance force to deliver the service. That is somewhat in the future. In the near term, there continues to be construction work out there. With the hiring of a new design build contractor, there is presumably going to be some need for local staffing of the trades. It's not usual that a contractor is going to come fully staffed to perform the work. And so I would assume that there will continue to be construction opportunities out there.
Another question from Anonymous. How does the Purple Line improve bicycle and pedestrian connections and safety?
Well, it's a couple of questions. So the Purple Line sets up the connections at the stations, and then we work with the counties, both Prince George's and Montgomery County, and we work through extending those pedestrian and bicycle accesses beyond the station boundary. And then, of course, if it's a state road, then we're working with State Highway to extend those connections that way. The safety of the entire system is designed in using proven techniques, both for the operating safety and for the safety of those who interact with the railway itself.
And this project is going to improve the entire length of the Capitol Crescent Trail. It's going to be wider, bigger, longer, better. There'll be more improved pedestrian and bike access through the trail, and we look forward to providing that public service.
Can I jump in?
Please, Joe.
193 will be improved significantly. There will be new bike lanes along the entire corridor, new sidewalks. So that will be a significant improvement for pedestrian mobility and bicyclist mobility. There There will also be some new signalized intersections, which will increase safety for all users on the road.
Thank you, Joe.
And if I can add a little bit, and thank you, Joe, for what SHA is doing. The county has been working with SHA and with MTA and MDOT in trying to do as much with regards to improving safety, especially in this corridor. And wrote a letter a couple of years ago and have been working through a series of recommendations. There's also an effort that Councilmember Tavares and Park and Planning have been leading. So hopefully some of those recommendations can also be integrated.
And for those that are concerned about dumping and other problem areas, please document them and send them to us at purpleLineMD, outreach@purpleLineMD.com. outreach@purpleLineMD.com. Let's see if there are other questions. There's a question about peak disruption at Riggs and New Hampshire Avenue intersections. I don't know if we can address that tonight. When can we expect peak disruption at Riggs and New Hampshire?
Do you know if are they talking about during peak construction impacts or?
Yes.
Well, the utility work will be continuing for a while. I mean, there's still a lot of utility work to continue, and that work will include all the major intersections along University Boulevard. We don't have an exact schedule for when a particular intersection is going to be impacted at this time, but the work will be, weekday, daytime hours. And handled with maintenance of traffic signage.
Another question from Anonymous. How do you think this new rail would benefit the environment? How does creating rail systems harm the environment of the community? I think I can respond to that one. This is a very sound environmental project. Since it's electrically powered, it's going to free us of a lot of emissions that would come from other systems. So it's going to have tremendous environmental benefit. So it won't create the harm that you would see with a normal system. So it'll probably be no louder than highway traffic. Probably not as loud as highway traffic. So it'll increase ease of traffic. It'll take about an hour to get from New Carrollton to Bethesda, we estimate. So that's going to save folks a lot of commuting time. So it has a great deal of commuting advantages. Another question from Anonymous. How has coronavirus affected the process? What are some of the biggest challenges you have encountered so far?
Gary, I'll be happy to step into that one.
Okay.
As a primarily outdoor construction project, Purple Line has knock on wood, and hope this still carries, been seeing relatively few impacts with respect to COVID-19. All the construction crews have increased their safety protocols, and they've had to enforce mask wearing, additional hand washing with additional hand washing units out on the field site. It has impacted some things such as transportation, where you might have typically, maybe put 4 people in a pickup truck. Now, folks are traveling from site to site separately, but in general, knock on wood, it has been going, I quite well, actually. We've had only 2 or 3 cases since March, I think, where we've had a crew that had, needed to quarantine for a couple weeks just because, one member had a positive test result. So we consider ourselves lucky.
Here's an art in transit question. Why do you think it is an important addition to the Purple Line? Well, a lot of attention was paid to the art in transit project, component of the project. Although some funding was cut, a lot was allowed to stay in the program, and we do have 22 pieces of art scheduled for the 21 stations. So a lot of thought went into it, some exhaustive study. It was a very serious application process and a very serious review process, and they chose some great artwork that's going to improve the aesthetic of the environment. So it's going to make our stations look even better. It's going to be modern construction with some dynamite art to, keep people intrigued and make the stations generally attractive. So it's a very important element of the project. Other questions? What can our local and government leaders do to help this process? What does support look like from them? Well, I can say that both Montgomery and Prince George's counties have contributed millions of dollars to this project, and they are full partners in the project, and their support has contributed greatly to this project. We would not be able to complete this very valuable and vital transportation project without the support and help of the county. So we really appreciate their support throughout this process. How do you think the Purple Line will enrich connections and bring our community together? How will neighborhoods be recreated? Shall I?
Please.
Well, it's all about connectivity. We are connecting people's lives, shopping, recreation, jobs. We're bringing that all together and making it easier for people to move and connect. And that's what the state is all about. We're about helping people get where they need to go and improving transportation. At the same time, we're going to be diminishing pollution. We're going to be increasing access to jobs. So there's going to be a lot of transit-oriented development near our stations. Already there's been more than $2 billion in development launched and planned along the 16.2 mile corridor. So we're seeing a lot of development. We expect that to include some affordable housing and affordable opportunities. So it's really being a big financial boon to the communities along the corridor. Jeff asks about additional federal assistance. If Congress passes another round of COVID relief legislation, might there be some transit dollars we could compete for?
I think what I'll probably have Vern talk a little bit about how the MTA uses the COVID relief funding. He's been with the agency a little bit longer. Vern, can you talk a little bit about how that works?
Yes, absolutely. The COVID relief funding grants that have been made available, and likely the additional ones, they offset the costs of the operations. For example, when you can't run service and operators are unable to work, these costs can be supplemented by these grants. And again, they're primarily oriented toward supporting the operations facets of the transportation, as opposed to it's less likely that they'd be applied to capital construction type applications such as the building of the Purple Line. But you know, since the grants that we're speaking of are yet to be disclosed, they could take on a different format, and they could provide funding support that they have not done in the past. And if so, we certainly will actively apply for any available grants to apply them as we are able to, if possible, for the Purple Line as well. Good question. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any new questions? Any hands raised? Turn on your camera if you'd like to be seen and heard. Okay, again, all of the questions that have been addressed tonight or asked tonight will be addressed in our question and response format that'll be posted later on our website, purplelinemd.com, along with this presentation. So you have another week or so to send in your questions to the outreach@purplelinemd.com address, and those questions will be added to the question and response format. You may not see your question posted verbatim, as some questions are related and they'll be combined. Matt?
Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody. We appreciate you all coming to listen, and more importantly, we appreciate you coming to ask questions and giving us feedback. While we're certainly happy to give information whenever needed, and we want to reduce confusion across the board, it's really through hearing your questions and getting your feedback that we understand how we can best make a difference to these and this community as we work our way through construction and get the Purple Line completed and running. So again, I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all for attending.